recycling mechanism, or actually various surplus recycling mechanisms. Let me just give you a couple of examples. I could give a lot more. When in 2008 we had the crash here in New York, in Wall Street, immediately the state of Nevada faced a major recession which had to do with the bursting of the bubble in real estate there. Now imagine what would have happened if the state of Nevada had to bail out the banks domiciled in Nevada. And also, if the state of Nevada had to borrow internationally without access to printing presses in order to pay for the unemployment benefits for a population whose unemployment rate was skyrocketing. What would happen is this. The banks of Nevada and the state of Nevada would have sunk without a trace, hugging each other like two very weak swimmers in stormy waters. This is what's happening in the Eurozone. So the fact that it's taxes in New York and in California that help ameliorate the problem of paying unemployment benefits in Nevada is a form of surplus recycling. Let me give you a second example, because I promised two. When Boeing gets a contract from the Pentagon to build a new fighter jet or whatever, drones, I don't know what, one of the conditions for that contract is that new production facilities are going to be built in Minnesota, in Missouri, in Tennessee, in Arizona, in the deficit regions. This is not an act of philanthropy on the part of the Pentagon towards the deficit regions of the United States. It's just pragmatic economics. Because only by building a production facility in a deficit state do you create, in that deficit state, a flow of income. People get jobs and start working. They're not getting benefits, they're getting income from productive activity, and then they can keep buying goods and services from California and from New York State, from the surplus states, so as to maintain the flow of economic activity that allows California to maintain its surpluses vis-à-vis Arizona. California is always going to have a surplus vis-à-vis Arizona. So these surplus recycling mechanisms, and there are various such mechanisms, are essential for keeping the Union going. So to my Anglo-Saxon, particularly British Eurosceptic friends, I say the fact that we brought together disparate countries under the same currency is not the problem per se. The problem is that we did it in a gold standard fashion, without a surplus recycling mechanism, hoping that it would float. After the war, the United States of America emerged as the only serious surplus-producing country following the human catastrophe of the Second World War in Europe, in Japan, everywhere. In the Bretton Woods Conference, Britain and the United States, particularly, had agreed on one thing. They want to reconstitute a form of the gold standard, fixed exchange rates. That was a Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rates, where the dollar was the only currency which was convertible with gold, but all the other currencies were fixed in their exchange rates vis-à-vis the dollar. But they had learned the lesson of the past, and they were quite determined to have a surplus recycling mechanism within this Bretton Woods international system. Where they disagreed, John Maynard Keynes was the representative of the Brits in Bretton Woods, was in Keynes's determination to establish that surplus recycling mechanism formally, to create an international system, he called it an international clearing union, that would transparently and as a result of institutional hard work ensure that surpluses are redistributed as productive investments or flows into the deficit countries in order to keep the Bretton Woods system, the post-war, if you want, gold standard, revamped, going, and to avoid a new 1929. The United States of America at the time, being the surplus producer, had a slightly different idea. They did not disagree with the concept that surplus recycling had to take place, but they just wanted to do it themselves. It was our surplus, we're going to distribute it any way we want, and we're not going to do it in the context of a multilateral international institution. Which is precisely what they did. The Marshall Plan is part of that story. But not just the Marshall Plan. For 15, 20 years, the United States of America was recycling a significant part of its surplus towards Germany and Japan, trying to prop up these two major economies in order to create currencies that were internationally successful and powerful, so as to create shock absorbers in case the American economy went into another recession. And the fear would then be that without any other powerful regions within the capitalist world, the Soviet Union or some kind of sharp recession would jeopardize the prospects of world capitalism. This is how the Bretton Woods system worked and how the gold era of capitalism in the 1950s and 60s was founded. It died in 1971, famously on the 15th of August of 1971, when President Nixon announced the end of it. Why did it die? Because by the end of the 1960s, the United States of America no longer had a surplus. So how can you recycle a surplus if you don't have it? And then something quite remarkable happened. We entered a second period, a weird and wonderful second post-war phase, during which American hegemony and dominance was founded on a reversal of the flows of capital and goods. To put it bluntly, and I shall quote from Paul Volcker's famous 1971 brief to Henry Kissinger, if we can't recycle our surpluses, we will recycle other people's surpluses. Which is precisely what happened between the 1970s and 2008. The United States of America operated like a huge vacuum cleaner, sucking into this land the net exports of Germany, of Japan, and later of China, ever-increasing deficits, trade deficits, were registered, but that was not a fault, it was part of the design. And who was paying for those deficits? Well, those deficits were being financed by a tsunami of capital that was flowing from Germany, from Japan, and later from China, back into the United States through Wall Street. Why? Because the profits that the Germans, the Japanese, the Saudis, the Russians later, the Chinese were making, found better returns in Wall Street. This is a big story as to how that was accomplished, but this is what was going on. This reversal of surplus recycling. During Bretton Woods, we had America recycling its own surpluses. Now have America recycling everybody else's surpluses, utilizing its own deficits as the locomotive